Special meeting of the Transportation Licensing Commission. If you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Since July of last year, we've been reserving time for public comment on any matters related to the agenda. As you all know, we only have one item on the agenda today, but been asked by 3 individuals to speak. You've been allotted 2 minutes. I'll call in the order of the sign up. Ms. Jeanette Barker. Yes, the button to the right.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman Hernandez, Commissioners. My name is Jeanette Barker. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Nashville Downtown Partnership and downtown stakeholders generally. We want to express our extreme concern and pretty much disapproval of the newly proposed rule that would allow some ETV operations outside of a restricted boundary between the hours of 4 and 6 p.m., which is clearly the busiest time of day, although it is worth mentioning that many peak times now start much earlier. This rule change is intended to quell vehicle congestion. However, data that we see show that the high volume of traffic inside the interstate loop not only continues outside of your proposed boundary, but in many cases is even more congested than it is in the heart of the core as volume moves towards the interstates and pikes. Adoption of this proposal would serve to pack these slow-moving and traffic-clogging vehicles into an already congested area closer to the interstate loop and at the busiest time of day, pushing ETVs closer to the interstate when many of downtown's 78,000 workers are trying to get onto an interstate or past it to another arterial roadway. We believe no convenience or necessity exists that would require any change to the existing rule and urge you to maintain the 4 to 6 p.m. break that we have today. Thanks so much, and thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
You can finish the. Okay. Thank you, sir. Didn't want to get missed.
Ms. Emily Lamb.
Thank you, and thank you for being here, Commissioners. I'm Emily Lamb here on behalf of Old Town Trolley, here to speak in support of the amendment to the regulations that would allow the operation for entertainment vehicles outside of the downtown core with an approved route. We've been told that the primary reason for restricting operation during these hours was based on downtown traffic congestion, and we would respectfully contend that to restrict all operations in the entire city outside of that downtown core that has been cited as the basis for the restriction is arbitrary. There's no nexus between preventing vehicles from operating outside of the downtown core and reducing downtown core congestion. Specifically, as it relates to Old Town Trolley, we've been in Nashville for 8 years, well before the entertainment vehicle industry exploded here. And we recently celebrated our 50th anniversary as a national sightseeing company. We operate, as you know, as a hop-on, hop-off company, which is different from some of the other operators here. And if I know that this commission values this type of service that Old Town Trolley offers to families who come to Nashville. Nashville is at its core a family-friendly city, and if the restriction is placed on us that prohibits any operation between 4 and 6, we will have to consider closing down our operations in Nashville altogether, which would result in the laying off of 100 employees here in Nashville. We really want to continue operating here, but it's just not sustainable for us to consider our hop-on, hop-off operation if we cannot operate between those hours. In addition to the impact of our own company, we provide an important transit service to many tourist destinations and businesses in and around Nashville's downtown core, as many of our customers frequent other businesses as they tour Nashville after being dropped off at various sites by our vehicles. If we're not permitted to operate between 4 and 6 anywhere in Nashville, many other Nashville businesses will stand to suffer significant financial impact to their detriment, as well as to the detriment of Nashville's tax revenue. For all of these reasons, we would respectfully ask that the commission approve this amendment allowing operations for entertainment vehicles between 4 and 6 on a fixed route outside of the downtown core. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michael Winters.
Michael Winters, Nashville Tractor. Thank you for your time in this special meeting. I know you guys all have stuff to do, so we definitely appreciate it. I agree wholeheartedly with Old Time Trolley's statement. The 4 to 6 ban had no data supporting it. In theory, it sounds good that we slow down traffic because we're large vehicles, but myself nor this commission has ever seen any data to actually support that. We've seen cliff notes and we've seen theories, but even with Old Time Trolley operating for the last 2 years from 4 to 6, nobody noticed, nobody cared. So it didn't affect traffic too much. So I think the 4 to 6 operation is a valuable service, for not only our company, but also the other ones. I do, once again, agree with Old Time Trolley. If 4 to 6 is a problem, let's open less hotels. Let's close the bars from 4 to 6. Let's all take a siesta if traffic is a problem. I don't think you can pin it on one industry. So us operating from 4 to 6, whether it's downtown core or outside downtown core, if you look at traffic flows from 2019 all the way to now, the data does not support the fact that we are a problem when traffic is moving at 12 miles an hour, according to the 2019 study, if my data is correct. So I recommend that we move forward with this 4 to 6 review and hopefully find a way to operate in some fashion in the core or outside the core as it benefits not only the people coming to Nashville, but also the operators and businesses trying to make a living from doing so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. What's the last name? Mr. Coopin?
Thank you, commissioners, for recognizing me and allowing me to speak today. Appreciate y'all being here for a special called meeting and for all the hard work you do. I'm here to speak in favor of these rule changes with a little bit of a caveat. I've heard from quite a few constituents recently in support of Old Town Trolley and the efforts that they've put forward. They've been, they bring people to local businesses. They take, when we talk about congestion, they take people off the street, right? They're taking people that might be driving their cars or a Lyft or an Uber to these locations and pull them off. We've heard from the Farmers Market and Marathon Music Works and Hall of Fame and all these entities. And so here to speak in favor of it, I think that there's a difference between ETV and sightseeing. And originally was hoping that we would we would take them up separately and look at the hours separately. I've understood that based on how the legislation currently reads, it's one category, so we couldn't separate them, which is why we're picking it all up at once. But I think that kind of how we got here, where Old Town Trolley had been operating with understood approval, and then understanding soon after that the approval was not able to be granted, to get that situation corrected so they can continue to operate while we continue to look at what the rules and regs need to be. I'm supportive of allowing them to continue to operate in that space. I'm working with NDOT and hopefully with y'all shortly on some other potential rules and regs ideas or changes that we can talk about that maybe address some of these congestion and noise and, the issues. I know Ms. Barker from the Downtown Partnership spoke earlier, and I speak to them regularly, and I'm supportive of their efforts too to make sure that downtown is a place with easy access in and out and not having disruptions due to noise and things like that. So, but at this time, for this capacity, I'm supportive of this rule change. I also was asked to say just a short positive word from the convention center, who very much appreciates the proposed change to ask for kind of a quiet zone under their tunnel. They share that when ETVs roll under their tunnel, and we've all done it before, right? You're under a tunnel, it's echoing, it's fun, but that does disrupt their meetings and their conventions, and so appreciate everybody's efforts to make that a space that we can hopefully take that disruption off the board. So again, really appreciate all your work here, supportive of this rule change today, and then supportive of continued efforts to address the concerns we see in these businesses. Thank you so much.
That will conclude the time we've reserved for public comment, effective on matters generally on today's agenda. We'll open the public hearing on the matter for the consideration for the proposed changes to the rules and procedures for Section 805F and Section 807A and Section 810A as soon as we get a quorum. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and restart our meeting. Prior to today's meeting, Mr. Rooker circulated the minutes from our prior April meeting. Has the commission had an opportunity to review? Is there a motion regarding approval?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. All right, so we have a public hearing under entertainment transportation today for the consideration of proposed changes to TLC rules and procedures in section 805F, 807A, and 810A. We've already heard from some members of the public who are against and for these proposed changes. At this time, we'll open the formal public hearing to hear from anyone else who would like to speak on the matter. Do we have another list of anyone who's would like to speak on it?
We have not.
All right. And that's okay, that's not required. I just wanted to have some sense of how many people would like to speak on the matter.
Sorry, do we want to break it up in sections, talk about individual sections or the thing as a whole? We need to take them one at a time, Ms. Gustonis? All right. So the first rule we'll consider then as a public hearing will be section 810A. The proposed rule the current rule reads, certificate holders may not allow service or consumption of alcoholic beverages unless the certificate holder has been issued a permit from the Metropolitan Beer Board. The proposed rule would read, all certificate holders and their staff may only allow the consumption and service of alcoholic beverages on ETVs to the extent doing so is in compliance with state law and regulations, including but not limited to those of the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission and those of the Metropolitan Beer Board. Would anyone like to speak on this proposed change? All right, we'll close the public hearing with respect to this consideration of a change to section 810A. Commissioners, does anyone have anything to comment or discuss? Sheriff?
I would just like to understand, is the state alcoholic beverage commission, is that more restrictive than the Metropolitan Beer Board? Is that why we're adopting this change?
I can try to reply to that.
Yes, thank you.
So they regulate different types of drinks. So like the Metro Beer Board obviously primarily regulates beer, although I think they regulate some other things as well, like maybe White Claw if they're low enough. But I think the Alcoholic Beverage Commission regulates liquor, wine, and spirits. And there are some beverages. There was some discussion last week, I think, by a person who spoke at the public comment period about a type of beverage that, while the overall percentage of alcohol is still small, it actually does have liquor or spirits in it, and that would be subject to the ABC jurisdiction, we believe. So we're just trying to clarify that and make sure that everybody understands who they're supposed to go to for what. High Noon, maybe it was called.
I believe that's right.
So we've not heard from anyone who objects to this change.
Please come forward and introduce yourself.
All right, hello everybody. Patrick Cludet with Upstage Party Bus. Thanks for taking the time to hear me out. So essentially, the way that things are right now is that the state, the beer board, the BYOB permit that we currently hold allows for anything malt. We could have White Claw, which is 5%, but we can't have High Noon. High Noon is a 4% beverage. It's canned. The alcohol is already regulated. Like, we know exactly how much alcohol every person is getting, we could figure it out with, oh, they drank 5, watch them, okay? When you get rid of beer board, or excuse me, if you were to go ahead and have it go back to state, this would allow us to have the high noon on. Concerns, I guess, to be considered would be, are they allowed to bring on stuff like hard alcohol? I think you guys could leave it at 8%, and everybody in the whole entire ETV business would be extraordinarily happy with that. We're not asking for, at least I'm not, I don't speak for everybody, but I'm not asking for them to be able to bring bottles of hard alcohol on board. That's when you get into the wild, wild west, as they called it back in the day. So realistically, for us to be able to monitor as an ABC certified bartender, monitor how many drinks somebody's having and knowing their alcohol content. Something like high noon is something that somebody with a allergy to malt would be able to go ahead and have. And that actually, surprisingly, is very common. A lot of people just do not drink malt. It affects them differently, gluten-free, blah, 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 blah. We get a lot of people who figure we need to switch our reservation with a different company because they allow it. So I'm completely in favor of you guys going ahead and allowing us to just have drinks under 8%. Doesn't matter what it is. Just drinks under 8%. That's what we ask.
I can respond to that if the chair pleases.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Costonis.
So unfortunately, sir, all this rule is saying is that we are going to follow state law and require you all to do that as well. So it is not within the jurisdiction of this board to allow you to do anything that the state law and the ABC regulations wouldn't allow you to do. So you have to talk to them about that, not us.
Yeah, sure. But again, this rule, for instance, back in 2019, when we followed state rules and regulations, people could bring on handles of alcohol.
They
They could
don't
literally
have the
bring-
legal authority to do what you're suggesting.
We don't have the legal authority.
I understand that. Okay. So, all right. So by putting it to the beer board status, but taking away the beer board, that just goes ahead and clears everything, correct?
So we did not take that away. We just added a reference to the ABC regulations and state law.
Okay. I've talked to several different operators about this, and we're all kind of just confused as to what this would allow, what this would not allow, and I guess
It wouldn't actually change the law in any way. It just is up to you all to get advice from your own attorneys as to what you can and can't do in terms of alcohol.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So this is essentially clarifying and directs ETV operators to follow the regulations of either the beer board or the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, or both.
Yes, that's the way I interpret it.
Just real quick, I'm Susan Piscatolo, one of the ATV owners also. But our permit is only a mobile BYOB permit. Our permit does not allow us to do any of what the state law will allow us to do. Does that make sense, if I'm correct?
We're not allowed to get that permit.
Yeah, we're not allowed to get that permit. You're talking about getting a liquor license permit. That doesn't exist for us. We only have the mobile BYOB, which falls under the ABC Beer Board. So that means if we follow that rule, then we're only allowed the malt and the beer on there. And if you're telling us, advising us to speak with our lawyer about state rules, that's a whole nother ballgame. That means we're applying for liquor board, liquor license, like the bars downtown. And is that, I just want to clarify, is that what you're telling us to go do?
Yes.
If we want to
yes,
allow liquor,
essentially,
and
if
we
you
want
want
to allow
to
high
serve
unit
anything
wine?
other than
Beer.
malt beverages and beer that are under 8%, then yeah, you need to talk to your own attorneys about what law will apply from the state, because the state is in charge of that, not Metro.
Right.
So you'll have to talk to them.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify a little better for myself and for my fellow other people too. So anything with liquor in it, the high noons, or any of that, we need to go advise with our lawyers and get a liquor license if you want to allow that on your vehicles.
I do not know whether the state allows that on moving
I don't
vehicles or
think
not.
they do. Okay, thank you.
All right, at this point in time, we'll close the public hearing with regard to the proposed rule change to Section 810A. Ms. Westlake, did you have a motion you were considering making?
I was going to say, I mean, understanding that this is clarifying and sort of understanding the impact, I would make a motion that we adopt this proposed rule.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have a public hearing with regard to, I'll take the next one that I think is less, there will be less comment. Section 807A currently reads, no ETV may conduct normal operations within one city block boundary of a school, daycare center, healthcare facility, or place of worship. Operations will be silent, and passengers cautioned on behavior when routes to and from loading zones require passage inside the boundary of a school, daycare center, healthcare facility, or place of worship. The proposed change is to add language to this rule, not change the existing rule, but just add an additional sentence, which is, additionally, when ETVs are operating beneath the Music City Center on 6th Avenue between Demonbreun and Korean Veterans Boulevard, operations will be silent and passengers cautioned on behavior. Is there anyone who'd like to make a public comment regarding the proposed addition to 807A? At this point in time, we'll close the public hearing with regard to this proposed change. Any discussion regarding this proposed addition?
I would be curious if we experience problems with an ETV traveling under the Music City Center. I mean, there are cameras all over that, I'm sure. I know there are plenty of people who have eyes on it. Would there be a penalty for failing to comply with this? Right, we're asking them to be nice, be mindful of their neighbors, to realize that there might be 2,000 potential customers in there that are trying to have a meeting, right? And maybe don't want the meeting disturbed. But let's say somebody yells and screams and causes a problem. Is there any sort of penalty for failure to comply?
Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Yes, there would be. So the code allows this commission to adopt rules, and a violation of the rules is essentially also a violation of the code and subject to the same kind of disciplinary action that you might give in the case of a violation of the code.
Would you anticipate that we would also extend this to pedal carriages?
Yes, sir. We do, when we go for the public hearing, that'll be included as well.
Right.
We have contacted them. Ricky's actually spoke with them and asked them to be considerate neighbors when they're going through, or to avoid going through there at this time. But we'll be adding this to their rules and regulations as well.
Great.
Mr. Hayes, would you like to make a motion regarding the proposed change?
I'd like to move approval for TLC ET rule section 807A modification as, do I need to read it? Or as outlined in the language of the agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Lastly, we have a proposed rule change to section 805F, which currently reads, to enhance safety and encourage traffic flow, entertainment transportation vehicles must travel in a manner consistent with the flow of traffic and may not operate during the rush hour period between 4 and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The proposed rule change would change the rule to read as follows. To enhance safety and encourage traffic flow, entertainment transportation vehicles must travel in a manner consistent with the flow of traffic and may not operate between the northernmost boundary of Union Street and the southernmost boundary of Korean Veterans Boulevard and between the Cumberland River and the westernmost boundary of 8th Avenue during the rush hour period between 4 and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. During this time period, ETVs may only operate on routes and zones outside of that area that are approved by the director of the TLC and NDOT's chief engineer. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this proposed change? Mr. Rosenblatt? If you'll hit the button to the right.
We good?
Yes.
All right. I feel like Joe Rogan. My name's Grant Rosenblatt. I'm with the Honky Tonk Party Express. Mine's just more of just questions about the proposed route. I'll use my company for an example. We rent a private lot that we pay for. That's off of Lafayette, 8th Avenue. That also touches the 6th Avenue street as well too. We've been doing that for 2.5 years with that particular lot. So we do cut through some of that boundary area potentially. So that was a question as well too. I guess the second question would be, is it cutting out Broadway completely, or are they going to be able to have cross-through roads so we can cross over versus just staying on the outside perimeters? And then I guess final question, what about operators that are loading and unloading in the downtown core? Will they be able to use Broadway to exit to this corridor? And if so, wouldn't that be the use of Broadway or the use of the downtown corridor? And if so, then, I mean, I think at that point, there needs to be a discussion if that's happening. And those are really my big questions, at least on the 4 to 6.
Could you restate the third question?
If there's any operators that are loading and unloading in the downtown core or 4 to 6 where this operation would take place, or the 4 to 6 route would take place. Meaning if I loaded up on 3rd Avenue or 4th Avenue and I have to exit to get to the boundary area, well, can I just cut over on Broadway? Can I cut over on 2nd? Can I cut over on 3rd? I mean, it kind of ties into question number 2. But if we're going to allow operators to go down Broadway to exit the area, I mean, I don't know. That's just a question that I had, but just going back to our company as well, we just have a lot that is on that border of the perimeter and getting there for the bathroom stop, or if 8th Avenue is closed for a Preds game or something like that, just want to make sure that we've got everything has just at least been discussed.
I would read this as, and I guess this is up for us to interpret and maybe you to opine on and staff to opine on. I read it as no operations, no loading, no vehicles. I mean, right now, this is a broadening. Right now, there shouldn't be vehicles operating in the county 4 to 6. And I think maybe staff has heard that y'all really want to operate from 4 to 6. And this is trying to take out a very small section. I'd encourage staff to consider expansion to the downtown loop at a minimum. It seems like a small area, particularly with the impact that 12th has and the volume of cars that 12th take. But I read it personally as no loading and unloading on Broadway, no traveling on Broadway. Maybe, I've debated with former staff the intent of the rules around going back to the barn, so to speak, seeing cars out that were still driving really slowly but at 4:30, but there are no passengers. And there was discussion, at least with me and staff, about whether that constitutes operating a vehicle. I think in Tennessee, operating a vehicle, you have a license to operate a vehicle, that means you're driving. But staff didn't feel the same way that I did on that one. And I don't know if other commissioners, yes.
I was just going to say that actually the Metro Code does define operate in this context, specific to ETVs and to these, the ability of the commission to set the zones and hours of operation. It says, for the purposes of this section, and this is in 677-320, for the purposes of this section, the term operate, in quotation marks, shall mean when the entertainment transportation vehicle is transporting passengers and does not include when the driver or employee is operating the transportation vehicle for service, repair, or when driving to or returning from its point of origin or final destination without passengers. So my interpretation of that would mean if there are any passengers at all on your vehicle, you are operating.
And I intermixed maybe two things, but as I read the rule that was proposed, there should be no vehicles operating in a geographic boundary from 4 to 6.
So there should be no vehicles, ETVs, within the geographic boundary between 4 to 6 with passengers on board ever.
So no pickup and drop off. Was that your question?
Yep. And no cut through either.
Yeah, pick up, drop off, or cut through. And then I guess my question is 8th Avenue, is that considered like a boundary to operate on, or a boundary to stay off of?
It's a boundary to stay off of. So the westernmost part of the 8th Avenue. So you couldn't be on 8th, you couldn't be on Union, you couldn't be on KVB and to the river, which would eliminate First Avenue.
Broadway, Commerce, Peabody,
Anything within that
Broadway, Commerce, Demonbreun, Malloy, Church.
Anything in that core. Yes, sir.
All the Demonbreun, all the east-west streets.
And I would like to also, if I may, Mr. Chair, add that they would have to submit a route that has to be approved. So it can't just be blanket. They can't just go out and operate. And then that way, with having the director over TLC review it, as well as our chief engineer who oversees our traffic, they would be able to identify hot spots where we're having issues with getting people in and out. They would be able to identify if there's a construction project going on that's now creating another issue. So it's not a matter that we're just opening it back up. They actually have to identify a route, submit that has to be reviewed and approved before they can actually operate between 4 and 6. So I just want to add that caveat as well.
So I guess I'm going to just go back to, where the TLC has required us to have a safe load and unload zone, correct? Can't just load on the street. So just in my case, I've gone the extra step and actually rented a lot with security for the last 2 years. Well, that lot just happens to be off Lafayette that touches 8th Avenue. So if I'm to get over to this proposed area, you're saying that I can't touch 8th Avenue.
What's the address?
It's the Horton Event Center lot on Lafayette, and I pay for it. So
South.
it's off Lafayette. There's Peabody Street. That's right there as well too.
Yeah.
But the only way that I can get turned around, because I want to make a right-hand turn, not a left-hand turn, which for the context of the TLC is much safer, using the roundabout to head to 8th Avenue South to make a right-hand turn to get into the Gulch area. That's the way that I would access it. Right now, what you're proposing is I make a left-hand turn through traffic and go to, I don't know what street to cut down through, go under an interstate. If we're trying to make it more complicated, we're definitely making it more complicated. And as opposed to the proposed route, anybody can give you a route, but that doesn't mean that route is going to be sustainable. One, you've got traffic, you've got construction. We have new development that's coming in at light speed through downtown. See Oracle, see North Avenue, or North Nashville, Germantown area. We're about to get a huge development on West End. It's like Nashville is exploding at the seams. So, routes are one thing if you can maintain them. The better solution, in my opinion, would just be just an operational like context of an area. We're making an operational context of an area for the downtown core. There is no route to stay out of. It's just a district to stay out of. And that would be, to me, more simple. It's going to be simpler for the TLC. It's going to be easier to enforce because once you start hitting people making a right-hand turn on one street because a car broke down or whatever, there's a police, you name it, then it's like, what do I have to do? Call Richard? If that's going to happen, then Richard's going to need 3 cell phones to answer calls coming in at 4:30 on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So, I mean, I think opening up 8th Avenue, it's a major artery, it's a thoroughfare, it's got a roundabout, it's easier, I think, for even other entertainment transportation vehicles in the room. I think they would enjoy having the access to 8th Avenue. So, I mean, I get wanting to keep people out of the downtown core, but I think the way that it's going about it is going to make it more complicated for those who have to enforce it and those who have to abide by the rules. And I just encourage you for just a second to put yourself in their shoes when we're talking about approved routes. That works for maybe sightseeing, and maybe that's what this is about. But I don't know. I just wanted to at least bring that foresight to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenblatt.
I am curious, do you guys still have your lot on South Second close? You had something close to, was it Napier or Sudicum? Didn't you guys have a big facility south on 2nd Avenue South?
We're off 2nd Avenue South.
Pardon me?
We're off 2nd Avenue South.
And you load there too, customers? Yeah.
It's
It's just another, I was curious. Yeah.
Yes, we have a lot, because it was required by the TLC, so we've been there, our company's been in operation for 8 years. So we've had that since 2017.
Emily Lamb, again, want to add, based on this conversation, add something to my previous statements. When I read this, I read it as between these, meaning inside of these boundaries. So, for our purposes, hop on, hop off, providing transit services to customers who are walking to many of the downtown areas, those restrictions are going to make it virtually incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for us to continue operating as hop on, hop off and servicing these downtown businesses that are so far from, essentially 9th, outside of those boundaries. So, again, I would ask y'all to consider clarifying by your vote that that we can have a stop or drive on those roads, but not inside of those roads. Thank you.
Hey, Emily, I am curious while you're sitting here, has Old Town Trolley stopped operating?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Between those hours.
Mr. Winters?
Oh, Grant said a lot, so I'm not sure how I'll follow up on all that. But I do agree with Old Time in their comment that when I read this, I also understood that to be inside the fence, not that you can't walk along the fence to some extent. Because those major streets, as you drive large vehicles, that could very well pose a problem. If we have a map that we could put up there that might help us all digest it a little bit, just a side note if anybody has a map, just so we can actually see the side streets, and we could probably sit here and tell you in this room which ones we can and can't go up or down on a fairly logical basis. The other question I have, and this is, I guess, about use for all vehicles, sightseeing, ETVs, or whatever. I've noticed in the city that there are operators using bus stops, WeGo stops, and also people that stop in Midtown in the middle of traffic, turn on flashers. They stop in college parking lots in the middle of flashers. I mean, where are we allowed to stop and not stop in block traffic, and who does that apply to and not apply to? Because that...
Have you reported any of that on Hub?
No.
Please do.
Well, the example would be there's a WeGo stop in front of the farmer's market that loads and unloads every 20 minutes right there in the Rosa Parks.
If you see an ETV or another vehicle that shouldn't be there,
So I'm just saying for definition, are we, by definition, maybe this is a legal question, allowed to use bus stops? Because I think if you read the definition, many of us qualify as a bus. Is that for public use or is that for private use? I don't know the answer to that one. Maybe that's something we can clarify as well. While we're pulling up maps, sorry.
I would have to look that up.
I've read the definition, and the way I've read it, I get the impression anybody can use a bus stop as long as you qualify as a bus. Now, I could be wrong, but I just want to clarify that one before somebody, maybe me, gets in trouble.
We may need to loop in WeGo on that discussion as well.
So Christy, if you don't mind joining me for a minute. Christy handles our operations. She operationally can tell you what we can and can't do from a turning radius, routes, and all that kind of fun stuff and how we get to our property. I know enough to be dangerous. She can tell you much more visually how this affects us, and it may affect some other operators differently. So Christy, when you look at that and you can or cannot operate on the main thoroughfares of the boundaries, how does that affect operations and what we can and can't do?
Extremely difficult for us to get from our headquarters to even get to the operational area that's approved if we can't use the main, like especially 8th Avenue going around the roundabout. If we can't access.
Excuse me, your headquarters are where?
747 Fesslers.
Yeah. So if we can't use 8th Avenue or the Sticks area, that's going to make it extremely hard for us to navigate around the city to get to the approved area.
Now, there's an obvious point here, too, that I want to throw out there and don't get me wrong, I am happy to be here to talk about Operate 4 to 6, so I'm excited for this opportunity, so let me clarify that. But we are also pushing us to areas that other people haven't seen a lot of us, and they're going to see more of us if we also do this. So, clarify just that. Grant also mentioned something real quick on the zones. We did it with golf carts. It worked successfully where we came up with a zone that golf carts could be. Golf carts were challenging because we had new operators who sometimes made a right or left turn in the wrong direction, and it was a little hard for them to stay on a route. So we went with the zones with golf carts, and we did that successfully, and it worked. Yeah. Golf carts are much easier to operate than some of these large vehicles. I am not a huge fan of routes for all the various reasons people have mentioned. Not to mention, not everybody's vehicle operates the same, whether it be a tall vehicle that has to clear trees or whether it be a vehicle that has to swing or not swing. So if I was going to say something, I would assume zones are better than routes, just because that's a daily task that Richard's going to have to manage, and that's going to be challenging.
Can I ask you this is an operational question, and maybe Christy, maybe both y'all can address it. I watch your vehicles travel northbound on 2nd through Korean Veterans and then turn from the middle lane of 2nd, there's 3 lanes, the middle lane of 2nd onto Malloy. And it cuts a lane of traffic, so I saw a car almost T-bone into the trailer. And then as your vehicle went right onto Malloy, it had to swing wide to make the turn. Do your vehicles have an ability, and this is back to your operational area, to make a 90-degree right-hand turn?
No.
No. So
we just recently had a police officer basically force us to make a turn we told him we couldn't make, and we broke a hitch in the process and blocked traffic.
You can't be on a 2-lane or a 1-lane street, for example, and make a right-hand turn and stay in the lane. So you have to figure out routes.
Well, let me clarify. 2 of our vehicles are traditional trailers that you swing like a semi-truck. One of our trailers is 4-wheel steering, so it follows you like a tram at Disneyland. It'll go wherever you go with no swinging necessary. But yes, our first 2 original vehicles drive like a semi. Yeah. So when you're following a semi that's dropping off downtown, you see them swing and say, I make wide left turns or whatever. We follow the same premise with our first 2 vehicles. Mm-hmm. Our third one has 4-wheel steering, which handles much better than the first 2. Mm-hmm. But yes, a 1-lane road is, you get somebody with an SUV who decides not to park on a curb or over to the curb, and you get somebody on the other side that says, I can park here for 5 minutes. We may be wedged in, which is why we stay out of Germantown. Those roads are so tight that we're just asking to get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So once again, as we look at routes and problems and our drivers have to think on their feet, routes are very challenging.
You have to, but you can make left-hand turns, right?
The way tractors and wagons are designed, on a farm, you can jackknife a tractor and almost look at yourself.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when we have over-the-road trailers delivered to my businesses, we
Yes.
have to help them route in so that they can make left-hand turns without going over the curb and hitting a sign or a.
Correct. And our drivers are very good about knowing where they can be and where they should be and where they shouldn't be. Like we told the police officer who very candidly, very honestly broke a piece of equipment because they wouldn't listen to us because they were right and we were wrong. But the wagons have stops on them. So the wagon design has a stopper built into it. So it only goes so far and then it stops you from making a mistake. And if you keep forcing it, you're going to break something. And that's how they're designed. So we know very well how sharp we can and can't turn. And a 90 degree, like you see a semi do, we can't pull that off because our stoppers won't allow it. Also, as we talked about route approval or zone approval or whatever it may be, I just wanted to clarify that as we look at this, that I operate sightseeing and I also operate the traditional party ETV stuff, that routes will not be preferentially picked based on which your vehicle you're operating, meaning, is this board going to look at this as we all fall under one rule, or are we going to say, well, this is a sightseeing, so therefore this special route's okay because you're sightseeing, you're not ETV? Because my understanding is we all fall under one rule book. There is no definition or separating of the two with the exception of who's standing and who's sitting. I just don't want to approve a route or send in a route for approval that I know someone else is operating and go, well, your particular vehicle and or style of vehicle can't run that route, but these guys can because they're sightseeing, as an example. And I operate both, so I'm speaking on both sides of the hat here, but I just want to make sure if we go to look at routes, that routes are based on necessity, need, safety, all that kind of fun stuff, not definition of vehicle. But I still believe zones is better than routes.
Would anything prohibit, let's say we've got, how big is Davidson County? 860 square miles or something like that. We're a big county. Nothing would this language prohibit the staff from creating, we've created a no-fly zone with this, theoretically, right? To say that you can operate in Antioch or Midtown or South Nashville or Germantown or any neighborhood. It wouldn't prohibit you from doing that. This just enables, right now there's a prohibition on 4 to 6. And this, I was surprised to see, enables ETVs to work with staff to figure out areas to operate from 4 to 6 p.m. that are outside of the downtown core.
Correct. And the reason why routes were the decision after much discussion is because we do take into consideration the construction that is going on. We do not want to put a sightseeing or an ETV operation where there's some major construction going on, as well as we want to make sure that it's not going to be in an area that cannot handle the type of vessels that sightseeing and ETVs are also, like the size, the build. So as was mentioned, Germantown's too small. So we would say, can you pick another vessel to take into Germantown because it is small and the roads are very crowded with parking. So we're really specific about route. And then also we pretty much have identified through our traffic management center hotspots throughout the entire county of where the number of trips are happening. So if they wanted to do a specific area, we know that is a movement that gets people in and out, moves them in a direction that they're going. It's a large number of trips. We would actually say we want you off of that route because that's going to conflict with the traffic flows between that time. So that was the main reason behind the route versus a zone, is because even though downtown's extremely crowded, we have other areas within the county that are extremely crowded as well and utilized to move major traffic around our county as a whole. And that's why it's something that would be approved by the TLC director, Ricky over there, and also by our chief engineer who oversees our traffic management center.
So I just have a question, and maybe it's for the lawyers, about the way the proposed rule is written. That last sentence says, during this time period, ETVs may only operate on routes and zones outside of that area. So does that mean you have to have a route and a zone? Or could you have just a zone and not a route? Or a route and not an identified zone? Is it an and/or?
I'm guessing that it was mirroring the language of section 320 of the code. Hang on, let me pull up real quick.
I'm just not understanding whether
Sorry.
you have to have both or whether,
It's a good question. I was just whispering to
Yeah, sorry.
Ricky about that myself. Hang on just a second. You got 320?
I'm
Okay,
going
so
to let Teresa
320
first say.
says, entertainment transportation vehicles shall operate upon the streets within the metropolitan area on routes or zones and within hours of operation established by the MTLC or its staff. Any deviation from these approved route zones or hours of operation, except for deviations caused by traffic accidents, must be approved by the MTLC or its staff. Any approved deviation must be reported to the MTLC or the MTLC director, staff prior to the beginning of operations. And then it defines the term operate, the language I read previously. So I don't think that's actually very helpful after all, but it is in the regulations, in the rules itself, where the term, where the 4 to 6 prohibition is contained. Let me see if I can find that real quick. To enhance, so this is basically, you're seeing the red line. So this is like the pre-red line version of subsection F, which just says, to enhance safety and encourage traffic flow, vehicles must travel in a manner consistent with the flow of traffic and may not operate during the rush hour period between 4 to 6, Monday through Friday. So it's, I guess I would say it's a policy judgment call in terms of what you all want it to say, but maybe we should clarify the language to make sure that they understand what you want.
I was going to say, I don't think the language is clear in that regard. And the previous rule you read used an or, so that there was an option of routes and an option of zones, which makes more sense to me.
Mr. Chair, I just have one last comment, and I'll get off this table, is I appreciate what NDOT's trying to accomplish, but my honest opinion, and I say this with all due respect, I think it's micromanaging the process. We don't want to be places where there's heavy traffic. We don't want to be places where there's lots of construction. We don't want to be places where they're building towers and have dump trucks coming and going. I know every day as our operators are out there running our vehicles, they make modifications based on what they see, what they touch, what they feel, what the next driver before them told, hey, I made a right and ran into this. I think they need that freedom to make that choice because there's CDL qualified good drivers who have passed your inspections and all the things it takes to operate. I think when you handcuff them and give them a route, they can't make day-to-day decisions they need to make. I think NDOT's intentions are well, but I think the micromanaging of that process actually hinders the driver to do a good job, is my 2 cents, and I'll be quiet.
Thank you.
You essentially want your drivers to use the Waze app.
Use their brain.
Right.
They're behind the wheel, they see it. They react accordingly.
Which, if anybody doesn't know what Waze is, it's basically consumers saying, here's a cop, here's a ditch, here's a wreck that might not actually be reported. And that's essentially what you're proposing.
Yes, because I can tell you from doing this for years, and I'm sure other operators can tell you the same, we see stuff before the city sees it. We modify accordingly before the city sees it. CMA is a prime example. Every year we get a map of the closed roads. We go to operate and there's roads closed that weren't on the map. It just happens. I think we've done a good job as the TLC of getting good drivers, getting good operators, following the rules. Let them follow it. I don't think you need to handcuff them down to you got to make a right, a left, a right, a left. I think for Old Time Trolley, in most cases, that probably works for them because they follow the same route every day, same way, say the same speech to some extent. And we do with our sightseeing as well. But the ETs are different. We're not going to the Parthenon. We don't, I can't operate some of our ETs where Old Time Trolley's vehicles go. I can't make some of the turns they make. I've followed them and watched them drive their routes. I know where they go. And if you told me to take a tractor in the same place, I can't do it. Their bus is more mobile or agile, should I say, than some of the vehicles we operate. And I think we need drivers that have the intellect and the training and the skill to make decisions as needed.
Let me ask you something. In the instance that these drivers make a decision that impedes traffic, stops it, police officer said make a right turn, and that wasn't you. You follow the law.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, it cost you money.
4-hour tow service is a little rough, yes, but yes.
Right. But say these decisions are being made, and we have had studies, and NDOT has spent money on engineers to say, if you go this way, if you do this, if your driver makes this decision, somebody's going to get stuck in the garage for 2 hours. You know, the inlets and outlets off of Broadway are not going to move. What's the recourse to that?
I think it's easy. 12 months ago, we had a conversation about Hume Fogg School. You know, there was a lot of press, a lot of news, Hume Fogg, you know, the students were hearing music and all that kind of stuff. I reached out to the principal at Hume Fogg, sent them an email and said, hey, anybody that drives an ETV that goes by your school, email me and I will ask them to go a different direction. Nobody asked me to do it. We haven't heard anything out of Hume Fogg. It's not that hard. If Ricky calls me at midnight and says, dude, I'm getting complaints about you going through the tunnel being too loud, guess what? We're going to fix it. I think that's his job, is to take those things that happen along the way and go, hey, we didn't count on this, but seeing how there's 42 vehicles going through the Gulch now at 1 o'clock, we need to think about how we're going to fix this problem. Then we modify, we change course. I think if you sit and micromanage a route, there's too many things in a day that change. If we start running into an obstacle in a certain area of town, a certain time of day, Ricky knows, call me, text me, I'll answer immediately. We'll fix whatever it is going on. We'll make modifications. I don't think everything has to be a rule in some cases, unless we get a habitual problem that nobody can seem to fix, like operating from 4 to 6 or something goofy. But I think when it comes down to, you know, being too noisy in the tunnel, we haven't gone through the tunnel since we got that email from Ricky. We don't even go through the tunnel anymore. That was my way to avoid the potential problem of being too noisy in the tunnel. It's just not that hard to make a modification. My concern is I have drivers every day that are facing all kinds of fun stuff in large vehicles, as I'm sure you can appreciate. And they have to make decisions, split decision, make a decision, right, left, straight, whatever it is. They need that freedom, is all I'm saying. That's why I like the zones better.
And I'm following you, but I'm also trying to get you to realize that if that freedom was there, you would need us. If you guys were good players, all of you, not just speaking for you, you do a great job, but are you going to enforce everybody else? That's kind of our job. If those rules and those regulations aren't there, and you're the good player, and we've got 3 other cheaters, so to speak, still impedes traffic.
But see, here's my opinion. And I've ran the analysis. I've looked at every single hub report since 2001. There were 257 of them since the hub report started getting filed in December of 2001. 34% of those hub complaints were filed by TLC members and or people of Downtown Partnership or Chamber of Commerce. They weren't filed by the public citizens in concern. There was 18 hub reports per month, every month in 2003. In 2004, there's 3.5. That's a drop of 15 hub complaints per month, every single month. Our industry is doing better, is what I'm saying. 150 vehicles down to 30 or 40 true ETVs.
Are you putting what you see on hub?
No, that's the downtown hub report that was sent to me from the city.
Sent to you. Okay.
What I'm saying is we went from 18 complaints a month to 3.5. And out of that 3.5, if you take out the TLC commissioner's complaints, it goes down to 2.5. That's 2.5 from 18 in one calendar year. What is that, a 500% approval rate? We're doing a good job. We've got rid of the bad players. You got rid of Off the Wagon. No offense to Off the Wagon. He had 35% of the total complaints in 2003. Yes, there's always room for improvement. And yes, there's bad operators. You got to nail to the wall, and I get it. But as a whole, it's not us.
All right, at this point in time, Councilperson Cooper.
It's part of the job description of a council person. If you put a microphone in front of us, we will talk into it. Appreciate y'all making a little more time for me. I guess question to ask to the commissioner of the staff is how is the route or zone going to be determined, and is that a route or zone that's consistent across all operators, or would that change based on Site C, ETV, or operator?
It'd be based on the route that's presented, and then we would take the route that's presented I would approve it or disapprove it and then send it to engineer. So it'd be the engineer ultimately that makes the decision as to what the route would be.
And that would be, each operator could come to you with a proposed route that you could approve or disapprove?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
And would that be consistent across all operators, or would that be?
It depends on what kind of route they give me. Or, you know, if I mean, it could be the same routes, it could be. Oh, no, no. There won't be there is not a distinction between seated sightseeing and ETVs, I'm sorry.
Right, and if one got a route, then everybody would probably get a similar route potentially. If that was
Yes.
an approved route, that could be used by anybody.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
But you also, I mean, that's a hard thing, right? Because you wouldn't necessarily want 87 vehicles on the same route.
That is
If
correct.
everybody wanted to go down 21st, right? Because something's open, some awesome attraction is open there. You'd want to be mindful of traffic and traffic flow.
Absolutely.
Correct. And again, that's why the chief engineer is involved, is because, as you said, you can't put 87 slow-moving vehicles on the same route. It's, at some point, it's going to create traffic congestion, or it's going to compound the traffic that's already out there. So it's meant to be per operator. So whoever solicits and provides a route and it gets approved through it, the same route may get approved again, and it may get approved again, and by the time the fourth or fifth comes through, the chief engineer may determine that's too many of those vehicles that are going to be there, that it's going to create a traffic congestion issue, and would recommend that they come up with a different route or a different zone for consideration of approval. So it will be per operator and providing us with that proposal.
I'm going to play devil's advocate again. So, 27 guys want the same route. What's going to be the determination of first come, first serve, size of vehicle, operator? What's going to be that determination? You know, if 17 of them want to go down, you know, the same road at the same time, how is the engineer going to determine which 10 get to go?
I would say that at this point, it would be based on first come, first serve, is how we would have to address this. And then from that, hopefully they won't all be on the same route. And our zone, that is taken into consideration. And then the analysis will be done. And if we hit that point where we know it's going to create a traffic congestion issue, we would actually then start declining the use of that route and make recommendations for consideration of another one. So it would be more or less of saying this road's no longer going to work. We have too many on it. And remember, this is just between the hours of 4 and 6. So, and the main thing is to make sure that we're still able to get people in and out of downtown and moving around within the county. And like I said, we have other hot spots within the county. It's just not downtown. And so this is going to allow us to look at all the hot spots where we're having traffic congestion issues, and where we would want to actually ask them not to be in that particular road, because we need to be moving people to getting in or people to getting out during that hour of 4 or 6.
And my understanding too is that we've kind of ended up here because we've got an operator that at some point was granted permission and then was found we couldn't grant the permission. So I'm going to reiterate my hope that we do pass this change today to let the operations 4 to 6, especially for operators that stop operating in the evenings anyway, can continue. I do think and hope that we continue the work on how this reads and what a rush hour plan might look like. As some of the commissioners have mentioned, I think it's important to make sure that it doesn't become, well, it's not downtown, but it's another area that's congested or it's clogging up other routes. I think there's more work to be done on this, and I hope that we do have some more work on it. And to the earlier questions from some of the operators, I think the box that's codified is the most narrow version of the box, but I would imagine it would be a bigger box or a bigger distance that the routes would be taking. I can't imagine the Gulch, for example, would love to, have, operators going in the Gulch, but not in downtown. You start to obviously go down that slippery slope. So hopefully those routes are created with, different that in mind and the different neighborhoods in mind. I would hope maybe we can find a way to have a consistent route for that everybody follows. I agree. We don't want a line of 87 buses along a route at a given time, and I don't think we would see that. I hope not, and if we do, we clearly need to address that. But I'd also hope, given that we kind of got into this position based on different routes, different people, different times, to maybe figure out what is a appropriate route during the rush hour time that allows for vehicles to move, not congesting our core and not congesting areas we've seen get congested by vehicles, but find a way to create a space that they can operate in high flow corridors and areas that they can continue to move but not congest the traffic.
I do want to point out something, that there actually has not been a finding that Old Time Trolley was granted permission. I mean, in terms of the logistics of the last sentence of the proposed rule, I mean, I tend to agree that it seems that the way I was reading it, it wasn't going to be restricted just to that one applicant for a route. It would, we through the director and NDOT chief's engineer would decide appropriate routes and zones to operate between 4 and 6, and then anybody could operate on them.
Anybody could, if a route is established, anyone could operate.
Right.
Versus an individual company.
Correct. That's the way I would.
Not the first 10.
Well, it would be impractical and almost impossible to police that if you were letting each person establish its own route. And I think it would be a burden on staff.
Well, I cannot see how this is not gonna just have to be implemented and revisited. It's impossible just to say, this is the way it's gonna be. I mean, we are going to have to revisit this. No ands, ifs, or buts. We're gonna have to work these zones out, work the routes out, come back and say, this doesn't work. We're gonna have to revisit this in this way. And I would appreciate everybody in the room as we take time to do this. And I know there, monies are involved here. That's why we're all here. That you appreciate we are trying to work it out. We're just not trying to put a bunch of no-go stamps on everything. We want it to work for everybody, everybody involved. Those in the downtown corridor who live there, the visitors to Nashville, your businesses as well, and above all, the safety of everybody in the downtown area.
I do think there are a lot of things to be worked out. I do think that it's going to take some flexibility, and I guess because of the lack of clarity, I'm really more in favor of a routes or zones thing, because, I mean, there might be a zone in Belmead that, the exact street doesn't matter, but the area works or something. I'm sure they would love that.
Gray Lion is operating in Belmead.
Yeah.
And
So
they're storing vehicles in Belmead, and they
yeah.
shouldn't be, by the way.
But I understand, because there's a lot of things to work out. I mean, I think that saying strictly a route, what's that route? Because there are things around turn radiuses, one thing and another. I mean, I think that the flexibility of a route or a zone, which gives the staff some flexibility to approve or disapprove, makes more sense to me.
All right, Mr. Rosenblatt, you're going to be. And then we'll close the public hearing. I do want to add that we only have another hour with a quorum. So if we're going to make a decision today, we've got to do it within the next hour.
Thank you again for letting me speak. I'm just talking as I'm hearing all this live, so these are the questions that are coming out. So it was proposed that it was a first come, first serve into the route corridor. Was that not what NDOT?
That's not how the rule reads. It's ambiguous, and so that's why we're discussing it.
That was my clarifying question on that. Yeah. And then the second one would be, who actually, if we do the route, would approve the route? Is that going to be the TLC? Because
it would be the director and the chief engineer.
So And then when the routes are submitted, I mean, would there be reasons given for why they would be rejected or not? Or, yeah, this is, again, I'm just getting this all real time to ask these questions.
Well, the rule, again, is ambiguous as to the process, other than that the director and the chief engineer would approve the route and zone the way it reads right now. Ms. Westlake is suggesting it should read or. So I don't have answers to those questions. Those are good questions. There may be a need to have additional rules on the process that we would have to pass. We could, if I am correct, Ms. Costonas, we could change the language at this hearing today. We don't have to have another hearing on the proposed language, even though it's not been presented to the public.
That is correct.
Okay. So we could, Mr. Rosenblatt, add some clarifying language to those issues.
I just didn't want to get to a situation where someone's route keeps being like denied, and then they're like, oh, sorry, you weren't first in line, or
Well,
whatever.
I do think that there's no question the way I'm reading the rule, just because a route is approved today, 3 months from now, that route may become unapproved.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm getting at. It's like,
It also looks like if a route is approved, any ETV can drive on it. It doesn't, I mean, maybe that's ambiguous in the rule, but the way it reads to me, a simple reading is that there's a route that's approved, ETVs may operate on that route.
Right. That's the way when I read the rule initially, that's the way I was interpreting it. I know when we had zones for other transportation vehicles that we regulate, that we were not restricting them to a particular company. So when I read the rule, I just, using that history of being on the commission, I just assumed that this was additional language to give flexibility to the director and the chief engineer to say, okay, well, even though we're letting you operate between the hours of 4 and 6, you're still only allowed to operate on these routes and zones that we approve. And
Yes.
It wasn't being discriminatory to a particular company.
Yes, sir. If we approved a route, it would be a route everyone could use. It's not like your individual route. That would be impossible for us to have any kind of enforcement on. If we disapproved a route, we would give you a reason why we did it. And I'm not going to just say, oh, no, you can't use it and not tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. But if we're going to approve a route, anyone would be able to use that route. And two, a lot of our companies don't even operate between 4 and 6. So they're, the ones that do, if we had a construction project or we knew something was going to, I would notify you guys to say, hey, Route 1 don't use this weekend or whatever, because we've got XYZ use route. Because I'm assuming I'm going to get several routes submitted to us.
To clarify though, no company should be operating 4 to 6. You said a lot don't operate, but no company should be operating.
Well, if we do this, if we adopt this, let me read it. Yes, sir, you're right. If we adopt this rule,
that's correct.
There are some companies that don't operate between 4 and 6.
Everybody may want to in the future
Right,
with the rule
exactly.
adoption. And for Mr. Rosenblatt, as an example, he would need to get to his location at 6 from Lafayette. He'd need to pick his people up at 3:15 or 3:30. He'd need to move the speed of traffic to get to the route, wherever that route may be, so that at 3:59, he is pulling into the route, and then he is on that route for his 2-hour special tour to then get back to Broadway. And it's a special sunset happy hour tour that right behind, he'll be like right behind the Old Town trolley moving. It'd be a parade route.
So, and then just again, we're getting this in real time, and I'm trying to be as helpful as possible too. Other ideas that were thrown out were, could we just get back Thursday and Friday and exclude the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that 4 to 6 is it just goes back to what it is on Saturdays or Sundays. Also, there was a talk with ideas about reducing people's number of vehicles that operate during the week and having them added onto the weekend, meaning you would take, 1, 2, 3, or 4 vehicles that you won't operate, I guess, Monday through Thursday, and then allowing it to tack on to like a Saturday or a Friday, Saturday after 6 p.m. Just trying to be creative and trying to get a win-win, something for everybody, because what Richard was saying is he is correct. The sightseeing tours are probably going to operate more Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday than the ETVs. We make a lot of our money Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. Even with this rule change, I know it sounds scary, but we really don't operate that crazy amount of tours Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, Fridays and Saturdays, different story, but it is a destination downtown tourist town. So, ideas, or can we get back Fridays 4 to 6? I mean, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot on that one, but then we don't have to worry about routes and stuff. Or can some companies say, hey, we'll pull 1, 2, 3, 4 vehicles off the weekday route? I'm assuming it's a Monday through Thursday, and then saying, well, you can have it back on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I don't know if that's making sense to anything or if I'm talking crazy, but again, just ideas. What I'm trying to avoid is, yes, the overcomplication of the enforcement part of it. And so and I'm open to any other ideas too. These are just my dumb ones on that. And then do we get clarification on 8th Avenue? Because it still feels like so we can't go through downtown. At least right now, we can't use 8th Avenue. So that means unless that route's approved, again, there's companies that load on 2nd Avenue and go through Broadway. And if
they shouldn't. I think we were pretty clear that is an exclusion zone, so there shouldn't be loading on 2nd. So Old Town Trolley stop at 2nd and Broadway wouldn't load. 4 to 6. Yeah. Who else loads? That's it.
As far as I know, but
yeah.
And I guess that was more of my suggestion. Is it just easier to be like, hey, Fridays or Thursdays and Fridays, and then the rest of the stuff we can not worry about. And it just, I don't know. Everyone gets a little win-win out of that. The enforcement's way easier to do. It less complicates it. We're not putting everything in the Gulch or wherever that people were talking about, but. Look, I want 4 to 6 back every single day, but I also want to be helpful to everyone that's involved here because, that would make me a hypocrite if I wasn't. But ideas.
We make our money on the weekends. You tell me I can't be on the road Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't care. You give me Friday, you just give me the money maker. You give me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I appreciate it, but it's not a big money maker.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rosenblatt. We'll hear from our final member of the public.
All right, thanks again for taking the time to listen to me. All right, so Patrick Kludak with Upstage Party Bus. I've been operating party buses downtown for a long time. One thing that we noticed before this 4 to 6 actually ever took effect is that the slowest Broadway is, or the clearest Broadway is between 4 and 6. Everybody is dispersing out of the city, right? So you take in consideration, where do most people come from? Like where all these high rises that are full of people working are all coming from, either downtown Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Franklin, wherever. That's why our highways are completely full with cars. They're leaving the city, right? They're getting out. There is a website that allows you to view cameras in downtown Nashville. I encourage you all to look at downtown Broadway's camera between 4 and 6. It's a ghost town. Let us operate on Broadway, go down Broadway, come back out on 8th, and then do the circle around, and that would be a perfect route. Broadway is what people are coming to see. You guys gave us the title of ETVs, entertainment vehicles. They are for entertainment. They want to see the hot spots of Nashville, which is Broadway. That's what they want to see. They don't want to see Antioch. They want to see downtown Broadway, right? So we're sightseeing tours, essentially with alcohol, right? So I think the biggest thing to consider here is that people leave the city, not go into the city. give us a city, give us downtown. Because this, and putting us near all the highway on-ramps and off-ramps, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. People are in Midtown, people are leaving the Gulch, people are leaving all those places, and you guys are putting all of us right near the highway system. Give us the downtown core because everybody's leaving out. Let us go in. I think that would make a lot more sense as far as the traffic. In addition, my vehicle is 14 feet tall, and I'm going to knock down every tree on in this beautiful city. I mean, not anything downtown we got trees everywhere. I don't know how I'm even going to be able to operate 46 unless you guys allow me to go through with the chainsaw. Which those streets are supposed to be cleared for 14-foot vehicles also. Every street that is considered, I forgot the exact ruling, but we're supposed to be cleared at 14 feet. I destroyed a $3,000 sign that I had on the front of my bus because the trees aren't maintained in downtown.
Ms. Alcorn, can you validate what he's saying about 46? Is Broadway a ghost town between 46? I mean, we've done a time study.
Yes, and we will be bringing that to y'all at the hearing next week. That's looking at it. I don't believe it is. There are different times, when we have checked and looked at it, but right now we're getting into the busy season. So we're seeing downtown pretty busy. Even surprised about the number of people that are down there at 11 o'clock in the morning.
If we put a camera on 12th Avenue, let's say 12th Avenue and KVB, you will see a line of cars, ton of cars. That, according to this, is an area that I could go ahead and apply to have as a planned route. That's a parking lot. Broadway, in front of, they've got the one camera that I believe is like somewhat near Tootsie's or something like that looks down. Sometimes it's facing north, south, who knows. But all the time you see only like 3 cars at a stoplight. The traffic's flowing easy downtown because everybody's getting out of it. And we're trying to just go into it. When we operated 46 beforehand, it was like the best tour to have because you could get from one side of the town to the other, no problem, because everybody's leaving. It's at 6:30, 7, 8 that all the cars are coming down for the tourism part of going to all the bars, right? Anybody who's coming into work, leaving to go home, is all trying to get on those highways that you guys are saying is all cool there. According to that, let's go ahead and Broadway near, I don't know. Just, this doesn't make sense to me. This seems backwards.
I will say I drive home that direction often.
Mm-hmm.
And every day that I drive on Broadway, there's a delivery vehicle, a van, something stopped outside of the Whole Foods at 12th and Broadway that slows traffic down. To your point, though, does it flow? It kind of flows. It's 3 lanes east-west from my experience. And you'll get vehicles stopping that shouldn't be stopping that then cause traffic problems for multiple blocks. But you're right. Like, if I was writing that boundary, I'd absolutely say don't go in the Gulch, right? Don't have a boundary from Korean Veterans to 8th Avenue South to the Interstate Loop, follow the Interstate Loop north to Charlotte, cut east on Charlotte to James Robertson Parkway to the Cumberland River, and get out of the downtown core. I don't think anybody should be personally on 12th or on Grundy or on Pine or on Laurel or on 11th or any of the 2-lane streets where your vehicles can't turn, right? It's McGavick. And then you add on to that the construction that's occurring and the intermittent people stopping who shouldn't, and there's a problem.
But we're going more into residential at this point. And the noise thing completely has gone down tremendously. The biggest whole entire part of getting this board together, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, was because there were so many noise complaints going into the city. So many that we had to do something about it, right?
Traffic and noise.
Yeah, traffic and noise.
Traffic and noise.
Okay, so we took care of the noise. we're the experts in sightseeing tours because we are the ones who operate them. And we know flat out that downtown Nashville is a heck of a lot less congested than where you're trying to push us off to. And more residential. So even if I have my music at 50 feet, I mean, I've got decibel readers. You make us have the decibel readers, everything else like that. We've got a noise complaint that Mr. Rooker went ahead and sent my way. He said, hey, you were operating on 17th and Division. You got a noise complaint on this date. And I laughed so hard. I was like, this is hysterical. This is my point. Because I told my driver that day, go down 17th and Division. See if you get a noise complaint. There's somebody who sits either on that corner or something that just does not like party buses, and they will go ahead and report you for just driving by their house. There was another video that I had where I was actually training a driver. You hear me talking over the music, and I'm completely just talking. We go past 17th and Division, noise complaint came in that day. Nobody goes down 17th and Division anymore because of the whole thing. And that's what's going to happen. When you guys go ahead and start putting things into effect, like the tunnel, right? You put the tunnel into effect. You guys said, just don't go through the tunnel anymore. Cool. Somebody who lives in the Gulch is going to be like, you know what? What makes me different than the people who are operating, who operate a business in the tunnel? I don't want to be disturbed. Are they being disturbed? Because our noise isn't over 50 feet anymore. I spent tons of money on my original concert stereo system. Yes, I had a concert stereo system. Okay. Definitely turned it down. And then after that, now I have speakers that go above the people's heads down into the bus. We're working on it. We're all working on it. We're all doing our best to go ahead and work with the city for noise complaints, work with the city for traffic. I am saying that this here is counterintuitive. What you guys are trying to do, you're trying to allow more traffic flow. People are dispersing out. Give us in.
Okay, I think I understand what you want.
Thank you, sir.
All right, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing. Mr. Rooker, Ms. Costonis, so with regard to this proposed change, if we do nothing, the current language of 805F will remain, correct? Which is a prohibition on operating anywhere in Davidson County between the hours of 4 and 6.
Yes.
Okay, so this proposal is a way of addressing and putting a finer point on the restriction that would allow operations subject to approval by the TLC director and the chief engineer on certain routes and zones to be for companies, to ETV companies to be able to operate between 4 and 6, Monday through Friday. And it would explicitly prohibit operations between the boundaries set out in the proposed language. Is that right? And we've heard.
I would say as worded right now, as to the outside edges of the streets named in those boundaries, so that would include those boundary streets themselves.
Right. I think if we probably need to clarify that explicitly if that's what we want the rule to mean, but I agree with you. And we've heard from a few of the companies who are against this proposed language. The chief reason seems to be wanting clarification on the final sentence, and then we heard from, is it Uptown Party Bus? Upstage Party Bus, that they would like an exception for being able to operate on Broadway.
I guess our current rules and regulations do allow the director to approve routes and times of operation, so this wouldn't necessarily prohibit the ETV industry from working over the next 6 or 12 months with the director to study and establish whether that route could be successful. Right? This is a broadening of the rules to say, y'all are the best, right? Where we've seen that there's been pullback and some of the other operators have been weeded out, and that staff is trying to broaden the hours that you can operate. Right now, it says you're not allowed to operate in this small little part of the county. Well, that's not to say in a month or 2 months or 6 months that staff doesn't come back with a awesome route, a parade route down Broadway of all the ETVs, right? Because the route's open to anybody to come in. The problem is it's only 8 blocks and you've got to get out. And so, you get to the flag court at the end that has buses that are trying to get out, or you're trying to go in first or second. That'd be the hard part with coming in. I don't know how you get back out. Like if there's no traffic, that's like 3 minutes. So then you're stuck trying to get out, and then you're mucking traffic up for everybody else. That'd be maybe the hard part about Broadway, 4 to 6.
I think the way the boundary is listed, so I understood it from northernmost, southernmost, westernmost to incorporate those streets. So I think from that perspective, I think it is probably clear enough. I do hear members of the public and operators saying that those are streets that are of a size that allow you to operate, and that there might not be, I would like us not to have unintended consequences for people not being able to actually make turns or do things. But I really support sort of protecting the core between 4 and 6.
Well, we could clarify that language and just say may not operate on or between and between the northernmost. It's actually it'd be on and between.
Or to protect the core, we could expand it. 8th Avenue South to the Interstate Loop, to Charlotte, to James Robertson Parkway, to the Cumberland River. Protect the core, keep folks out of the Gulch, which we've heard from a couple people that Gulch people would be concerned that the streets are too small to make turns. And that would really clarify intent. I am curious, maybe Mr. Roker or to Director Alarcon, why was the Gulch in particular, with some of the narrowest streets, included in an area that could have a route?
When we did the Connect Downtown study, the focus was in the core, and it wasn't necessarily in the Gulch, even though we did collect data about the amount of trips that were occurring in the Gulch. The bulk of what we were trying to do was really also tied in with transit. And the focus was how can we get the transit also moving in and out of downtown, given that the WeGo Central Station is actually on the northern end of it. So that's where the main focus is really why the Gulch hasn't been as big of an emphasis. But it is still within the boundaries of the study. And we are also looking at making an improvement so the Gulch will move better as well. We have some challenges over in the Gulch right now with the amount of construction that is going on. So we take that into consideration. When the routes will be considered, all of that will be taken into considerations or zones. So to make sure that there's not going to be conflicts created are coming to a halt because somebody decides to stop in the middle of a travel lane and that's the only travel lane. So those are some of the things that the chief engineer will take into consideration.
I'm curious, just relative to creating a route, would you foresee that you would ask the industry, or that we would, as NDOT, industry would propose a route, and would NDOT engage a third-party traffic engineer to analyze the route and the impact on traffic?
I don't know, it would be a third-party engineer, it would be your chief engineer at NDOT, yes. But we could, yes. We could.
I don't know personally the chief engineer or what his or her skill set. Maybe that's the wrong word. I'm sure that person's really skilled, but like I've engaged multiple traffic engineers for real estate projects, and know what they have to do to analyze a project, or if I'm building when I worked in Atlanta, if I built a project that had a regional impact, and routes of slow-moving vehicles could impact regional traffic flow, we had to go through a certain traffic study process and submit it with our application. I'm just curious if there's been much consideration to how routes get approved yet, or that'll take time?
There has been discussion internally with staff about how they would go about it, so that if they denied a route, they would be able to give specific reasons. So there will be a study that will be done. And I do feel like that study will actually be done mainly through the Traffic Management Center, where we have a lot of our traffic engineers in place that would actually run the studies and everything that they do to make those calculations and determination based on what is submitted to us for consideration. And then it would go to the chief engineer, who would have would collect all of that information and then make that determination from that point.
I have a question. Listening to the operators, I've only heard those say that 8th was a kind of a problem area and not Union or KVB. Is it, if we're trying to modify this, is that an area that we should give some leeway to, or at least consideration and discussion over, and the others don't seem to have been brought up in anyone's discussion?
KVB, definitely I think could put it in a discussion.
But not 8th?
I'm going to defer to.
8th constrains at the roundabout to basically
Yes.
one through lane. 8th Korean Veterans Boulevard stacks westbound at 8th to 3rd. The traffic flow through is pretty abysmal. Going westbound to 8th.
I've actually had that experience.
And then trying to get through 8th Avenue south from Demonbreun is pretty abysmal. 8th Avenue north to Demonbreun, all of Demonbreun is pretty abysmal. Broadway is not horrible going westbound at peak times, other than trying to get around Hell on Wheels, who can't accelerate fast enough to get from one light to the next. And when they operate during the day, they don't operate 4 to 6. But during the day, when they're on Broadway, it's painful. But getting through Whole Foods, there's a bus stop, and then there's a mail truck, a bus stop, and delivery drivers, Amazon drivers that run in, and that all tightens up. And then you've got the 13th kind of problems. But I wouldn't say that 8th, and really 8th south to Wedgwood, getting under the tunnel south to Wedgwood, that whole section of 8th, from about 3:15 until 6:30 is bad. Thank you also for working on 4th and Korean Veterans Boulevard and milling. I don't know if that's y'all or the state, but that just happened. And the condition of the asphalt there has been a problem that also slows flow through. That's getting better.
Yes, thank you. Also, WeGo's, one of WeGo's main routes is 8th, and down to Broadway, and then they also head out to Midtown to pick up that route, that direction. So that's a heavy transit route as well.
So I think it's really hard to get this right. And it's going to take folks obviously working together and trying to address unintended consequences if we encounter them. That said, I think with the addition of some of the changes that we have proposed, that is to say, may not operate on and between, adding the on, as the chair suggested, and with changing routes and zones to routes or zones, I would propose that we adopt this rule. Make a motion that we adopt this rule.
I'll second to open it up for discussion.
Right.
Thank you.
I agree. I don't see any other way than to implement something and to adjust after. I mean, we've got to get the ball rolling if we're going to make any headway.
I tend to agree with that. I mean, obviously, this rule change, to the extent it's a less of a restriction that we currently have in place. So, in terms of prohibitions on continued prohibitions on the ETVs, I mean, this is less prohibitive than the current rule. And as Ms. Westlake stated, it's hard to get it exactly right, but this is a very good first step toward creating and recognizing that there are areas that ETVs can operate during hours of 4 and 6, subject to the director and chief engineer's approval.
I don't believe this will be the last conversation we will have about this. This is going to be something we're going to take a look at. We're going to work with the industry. We're going to work with the engineers, and we will continue to improve this. But I agree with the chair. We got to get something going to see how it works, and then we can tweak it from there as time goes on.
And Mr. Chair, if I may address the commission, Connect Downtown has been completed and has been the resolution has been voted on by council and approved. So we are actually starting the implementation of the plan. We do feel that there'll be some short-term wins that will help with the traffic flow that may allow us to come back and say, okay, we think we can now do this. But we need some time to implement those recommendations so that we can really get a feel for how we can do a better job of getting the traffic moved before we add more to it. So we're just asking for a little bit of time, but we're trying to get some of those recommendations implemented, understanding that we feel that will help, but then it'll allow us to start changing the conversation. So I'm with Ricky. I don't believe this will be the last conversation. We've committed to come back every year on Connect Downtown with an update where we're at, what we're doing, and we've already started proceeding forward with getting those recommendations in play.
Rick, have y'all established a route or proposed route since y'all have this legislation being, or this change being made? Have y'all thought through? Because if we pass this today, I mean, there's got to be some time where a route's established, approved by two different people. I mean, what does that look like?
We kind of were going to lean on the industry to kind of tell us what would be the best route for them as they propose different routes and different things. They know where they want to go. We have not sat down and drawn up a route or done anything like that. We're going to get some input from them and from engineering and see what routes would work the best.
All right, just as we're just still discussing this, I want to make sure that from a syntax point, we're all in agreement on what on and between means. Or should it read on or between? I think we're I think we are deciding that that the ETVs will not be able to operate on the boundaries, not just between them.
On the streets,
Yeah, on the street
nor in
boundaries.
between the boundaries.
Right. So should that read on or between, or
Yes.
or on and between?
On or,
Okay.
I think works. Lawyers nod.
Is that crystal clear to you guys?
I'm sorry. You can't be on the boundaries.
Correct. Or within? That's an exclusion zone.
Crossing over, forget it.
No.
I've got a bathroom stop, almost Lafayette.
Then you will not be able to use that bathroom stop.
So we can't cross over 8th Avenue, even though we're not in the boundary area, or on using the
You can't.
crossover street to get us into the boundary area. Also, where my facility is, I have to cross over 8th Avenue because I'm in 2nd Avenue South, so therefore, you're saying that I can't use any routes to cross over.
Only between 4 and 6.
Between those hours.
You could cross over 8th Avenue south of the roundabout, not north of the roundabout.
Within the square.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, south, you could cross over at, what is that, like, Cannery Row or Drexel or Leah. You can circulate through those streets.
Side note in the conversation too, the bridge over by Frugal McDougal's is also low. Tall vehicles can't get through there. Yeah. Just side note, that's how you get down that dirt.
Just making sure there was there you go. I think that was it, because y'all said 8. And then that was
Within.
a hard
Western boundary is 8th, the southern boundary is KBB. So you can cross over at Palmer Street or Leah or Drexel. You can travel northbound on 8th from Midtown. You'd have to take a right on Drexel, a left on 7th, a right on Peabody to get into your facility.
To answer your question, I'm clear.
All right, Ms. Westlake, would you like to restate your motion one more time, just to be clear?
Yeah, thank you, I will. So I would move that we adopt proposed language in TLC ET rules, section 805F, using the language that appears on the screen, if I can do that, to enhance the safety and encourage traffic flow. Entertainment transportation vehicles must travel in a manner consistent with the flow of traffic and may not operate on or between the northernmost boundary of Union Street and the southernmost boundary of Korean Veterans Boulevard, and between the Cumberland River and the westernmost boundary of 8th Avenue. During the rush hour period between. Nope.
It sounds a little silly to say on or between Cumberland River, but I think to say on or between to be consistent with the reference to 8th, maybe we do want to put that in, or change it to first.
Or feel free to be on the Cumberland River.
Yeah, let's use first.
So, and First Avenue?
North and south.
So.
On or between first.
Yes, on or between.
On or between First Avenue and the westernmost boundary of 8th Avenue. During the rush hour period.
There's an extra and now. No, not, that's fine. No, there's an extra and. No, I'm sorry, not there. Right after the comma, Boulevard, comma, and, or on. Yeah, it should just say on or between. Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, like, do I have to read it again, or can we, can my motion be for passing what's on the screen?
It can be passing what's on the screen.
No, I think read it again.
Read it again.
Okay.
Sorry. Read it again.
Okay. So I would move that we adopt the following proposed rule in section 805F. To enhance the safety and encourage traffic flow, entertainment transportation vehicles must travel in a manner consistent with the flow of traffic and may not operate on or between the northernmost boundary of Union Street and the southernmost boundary of Korean Veterans Boulevard, on or between First Avenue and the westernmost boundary of 8th Avenue during the rush hour period between 4 and 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. During this time period, ETVs may only operate on routes or zones outside of that area that are approved by the director of the TLC and NDOT's chief engineer.
Ms. Castellanos, are you sure that we need to delete the "and" before the "on" or between First Avenue?
Ms. Haber disagrees with me, so I guess that is a question of style, and I will leave it to the commission to decide.
I think it needs the "and."
Okay.
My motion includes the "and." I'm not reading it again.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, that concludes our business for the day and the agenda. Mr. Rooker, anything else?
Nothing else, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.